This is the year 1914 when an 8-year-old boy was playing in a village in Japan. Then he saw a machine running on 4 wheels. It was a Ford Model T, which surprised the boy a lot. This was the day when the 8-year-old boy was first attached to cars and mechanical parts. It was called Soichiro Honda, and who knew that in the future we would see its name on every small and big car. Welcome back to Soichiro Honda was born in a small village near Mount Fuji in Japan in 1906. His father was a blacksmith and also worked as a cycle repairman in part-time. Honda's 5 siblings had already died of various diseases. Therefore, his parents had high expectations of their child. But he had no interest in studying. However, Honda was more interested in repairing cycles with his father. When he was 16 years old, he saw an ad for a job in the newspaper. Technicians were needed at this automobile service station in Tokyo called Art Shokai. Honda wrote a letter to the company for a job and was fortunate that a positive reply came from there. This was the time when Honda left his home and school and left for Tokyo, hoping to earn money. Honda's dream broke when he reached Art Shokai in Tokyo. The company's owner started getting Honda to do cleaning work and even put him on babysitting. What would poor Honda do? On one side, he left his home and parents, so on the other hand, he was being taken to useless work. He was ashamed to go back to his village because he was not able to face his parents. This was the reason why he was forced to do odd jobs there for the next few months. A few months later, the owner of Art Shokai also started taking work from Honda for workshops. Honda was very interested in this work from the beginning, so he could understand things easily. In a few months, he had learned a lot about all kinds of cars and their parts. During this time, Art Shokai also made 2 sports cars. The first car was Art Daimler and the second was Curtiss. Both of these cars were made using used engines, which also achieved the first position in the Japanese Motor Car Championship 1924. Honda was still a good mechanic, but in this race he sat with the driver as an engineer. This was the event after which Soichiro Honda made motorsports his religion. For the next few years, he worked at Art Shokai and kept increasing his experience. In 1928, at the age of 22, his owner decided to open another branch. This branch was to be in Hamamatsu City, which the owner sent there by giving Honda responsibility. Honda started this new branch of Art Shokai with 1 worker, and in just 2 years, it reached up to 30 workers. He had now become a brilliant mechanic and racing driver. He took advantage of his skills and designed a sports car for his owner. This car could run at a speed of 120 km per hour, which broke all old records. This record remained the highest record in Japan for the next 20 years. Honda's importance had increased in the heart of the owner of Art Shokai. He wanted to open his own workshop, but maybe fate did not approve. In 1936, during racing, Honda had a horrific accident. In this accident, his life was saved, but his left arm was fractured, his shoulder was dislocated, and there were many wounds on his face. He was about to die here. He could neither work as a mechanic nor participate in racing. After several months, when he recovered, he requested the owner of Art Shokai that he could not do this repair work anymore. Instead, he suggested that he should start a separate company to make spare parts. The stakeholders of Art Shokai immediately rejected this idea. They were already making profits and no one wanted to take a new risk. At this point, Honda decided that he would open a parts manufacturing company alone. In 1936, at the age of 30, he joined his friend and opened the Tokai Seiki Heavy Industry. And made his friend, Soichiro Kato, his president. He had already opened the company, but Honda had no investment to run it. He worked for Art Shokai all day, while at night he tried to make his own engine piston for his new company. For the next few months, he kept going on this routine, but he could not succeed. Instead, he was weakening by constantly shifting. One failure after another had blocked his way. That's when he took admission in a university to gain expertise in metallurgy. After working hard for 3 years in 1939, he finally succeeded in making a piston. Now he left the job at Art Shokai and started making pistons full-time. But he didn't know that there were still many faults in his piston. When he offered his piston to Toyota, Toyota rejected 47 designs out of 50. This news fell on Honda like lightning because he had no way back. He started touring all over Japan to understand the requirements of different companies. He went to different factories, met car manufacturers, and spent the next few years understanding the market. And after that, Honda made a piston again. This time, this piston had passed the quality control of all the companies. He started getting orders one after another and once again saw Honda fulfilling his dreams. To fulfill the orders, his company hired 2,000 workers. Who knew that this joy of Honda was only a few months' guest? In 1941, Japan jumped into World War II and the ministry took control of many Japanese companies, including one of Soichiro Honda's. Honda was downgraded and made the company's senior managing director. And things got worse when the company's workers were put in military service. The next 3 years were extremely difficult, but in 1944, an incident that completely ruined Honda's hopes. During the air raid, a missile hit Honda's factory. The situation in the country was getting worse and worse. Japan was losing the war. Then in 1945, 2 nuclear attacks happened, which broke Japan's back. After this incident, Japan surrendered to the Americans. The war was over, but Honda had lost everything. He sold his remaining assets to Toyota for 450,000 yen and once again became jobless. This was not just the case with Honda, but the whole of Japan was going through a very bad crisis. The economy was melting, food, water, and inflation were all at a standstill. It was extremely difficult to get public transport because Japan's oil was also scarce. Meanwhile, Honda got a small Japanese Imperial Army engine that he used to run wireless radio with. He had an idea, forced by his habit. He thought, why not put this engine in a cycle and solve the problem of transport? This would make transport easier and cheaper. Because people were already very worried about inflation at that time, so when he saw this engine on a cycle, everyone liked the idea. Honda got a few used engines, but people's demand was so high that Honda designed its own new engine. This was the first time in history that a Honda logo was seen on a machine. Honda didn't have enough money to build these cycles at mass level. So he wrote an open letter to 18,000 shopkeepers. People had so much faith in Honda that 3,000 shopkeepers gave him a positive reply and also gave the money in advance. In the next 3 years, Honda built a motorcycle that was in line with the market requirements. It was launched under the name of Super Cub, which made a ruckus in the market. This model was so successful that in 1958, it left behind the sales of America's own Triumph and Harley-Davidson. Because Honda was very fond of racing, he decided to make a sports bike. He would go to different bike races and note down the special features of the winning bike. In those days, such sports competitions were more of a marketing tool for manufacturing companies than a race. In a few years, Honda's first sports bike was launched, which won the first position in the 1962 International Racing Competition. This race gave Honda its name and made it famous all over the world. In the 1960s, Honda had become the world's largest motorcycle manufacturing company, and by 1968, it had sold 10 million units. After spending 62 years of his life, the car manufacturer, Honda, had finally succeeded, but the dream he had had since childhood had not yet been fulfilled. Honda now wanted to go towards car manufacturing. Many people refused to do this, but they did not listen to anyone. At that time, companies like Toyota and Nissan had already set up their business in Japan. It was very difficult to make a new place in the market there. Honda launched its first pickup truck, T360, which failed. After that, it launched the sports car S500, of which only 1,300 units could be sold. After many years of hard work and many designs being rejected, Honda Civic was finally launched in 1972. This is the car whose new models are still famous all over the world. In the 1980s, Honda Motors was Japan's third largest manufacturing company, and in just 10 years, it became the third largest in the world. Today, Honda's name can be seen on cars, motorcycles, boat engines, plane engines, and dozens of power tools. The next year after Honda Civic's launch, Soichiro Honda retired from the company in 1973. And on the 5th of August 1991, this journey of his life ended forever. I hope you will like and share this video of ZemTV. Thank you very much for your lovely comments. See you in the next great video.